When you look at what kind of houses the Sopranos crew lives in, and then you look at, say, the mansion of Johnny Sack, the underboss of a New York family, how on earth was Tony Soprano able to afford his mansion as a captain of a glorified crew? Well, if you remember, it's highly implied in the pilot that Tony is actually the boss of Jersey instead of a capo, something which is essentially retconned by the second episode. So the showrunners would have initially envisioned Tony as a boss, perhaps drawing from the homes of real-life mobsters like John Gotti or even Paul Castellano's infamous White Mansion. So we just kind of have to accept that awkward juxtaposition of a capo like Tony living in a huge place and an actual boss like Junior living in a low-key home. But even within the context of the show, it still works. Tony's house was built by Hugh, his father-in-law, which saved him a lot of money. And that was before inflation, Tone. In fact, as he explains to Brian and Ralph when talking about HUD, the house is now triple what he paid for it. It's implied the house is a bit further away from the city compared to other captains, so Tony may have picked up an early cheap lot. And there are subtle hints in the show that the timber and materials used by Hugh were cheap bullshit. Take his shenanigans with Carmela and the spec house materials, the fact that doors don't close properly around the Sopranos' home, sound travels far and wide, the roof is soft tar. Hugh and that pudgy Walsh, they're thick as thieves. Tony also had influence with the construction union, so he could get a bargain on materials and skilled labourers to help out with Hugh, or straight up steal materials. There's a point where Tony says something like the house being worth $1 million too. So him paying around $400k for the home in the 90s with a $50k or so down payment sounds reasonable, and it's something he would be able to do. This was the 90s. I remember when houses were on the market for a reasonable price, and as far as I'm concerned, they should still be there. We also have to consider that Tony was always regarded as the boy wonder. He was already an early riser, making himself known after the Feach La Mana card game robbery, whatever happened there, and he became captain of his father's crew in his late 20s after his dad died young, meaning all of Johnny Boy's rackets would have gone to him and a package that could choke a fucking elephant. That means Barone Sanitation, where he held a no-show job as the second highest employee in the company. It would also mean Satrial's, where the income would be more modest, but there were opportunities to launder money. It would also include being a silent partner in Hesh's record company, and Tony himself says to Massive Genius, "That money bought my house on the New Jersey shore." But simply put, Tony was smart and a good earner for his age. He'd been making the kind of money 40 or 50-year-old mobsters would be happy to make long before the start of the show, which is one of the reasons why everyone looks to him as the heir apparent to become boss after Jackie becomes Kimosabe. He's got an IQ of 134, it's been tested, and he's earning with 3 fucking hands. This can't be emphasized enough. While Richie Aprile thinks selling coolers for $2 or $3 a pop is a good deal and features beating up gardeners, Tony on the other hand has an astute nose for white-collar crimes. Waste management, Webistics, HUD, the phone cards and the Esplanade are just a few of the things he was involved in. Heck, just off a comment cousin Brian makes in passing, Tony creates a scam so lucrative that New York demand a cut. And the key point, and really the main answer to this entire video, is that it's not that Tony makes a lot of money, it's that he makes money that can be seen as legitimate income. There's no point of getting a slice of the Colombian drug money bust and Tony has no legitimate income to claim it from, or a means to clean the money. A la Al Capone, if he starts buying expensive things and cannot show where he got the cash for it, the feds will be at his door, and it's adios you fucking skank and 20 years in the can for Leadbelly. Money is first laundered so it can be declared in tax returns, which is the key benefit of the likes of Satrial's, Tony's chicken shop, which he sells in season 6, the Bing, where Tony will no doubt have some kind of official role. These are all legitimate sources of income that allow him to launder money and therefore live better than the rest of the crew. This is really where the issue is. Going back to Paulie, the man netted $400,000 from the Colombian heist, but his problem is he can't really buy anything big with it, otherwise he'll have to show where he got the money from. If you remember, when Tony gets angry at Richie for attacking Beansy, he specifically mentions Beansy's place is strictly a cash business, meaning he uses the place to launder money. In Pine Barrens, Tony goes to the Russian guy with a bag of money so it can be laundered and come back to him. He answers to bigger people than you, my friend, and if more of the mobsters follow Tony's footsteps, they'd have less agita. Things start to make much more sense when you look less at how much money the crew makes from scores and more at how much legitimate income they can claim they make. Paulie may have wads of cash lying around, but unless he can, say, bribe the head of Green Grove, he can't use that cash for his ma's stay at the retirement community. So it makes sense that he's always moping about money. He's rich in a sense, but also very poor. It's why Tony makes such a big deal in Remember When about Paulie losing his income stream from Barone Sanitation when the company is being sold, as it's one of Paulie's few proofs of legit income. Think of the scene in Goodfellas where Jimmy goes irate after the Lufthansa heist, with his crew buying expensive cars and fine coats. The rest of the guys will be making enough money to put food on the table, but they lack enough legal income means to buy things without the IRS getting involved. The standard of living is determined by how much money the guys can launder into legitimate income, not by how much they make, and thus the guys who had the stronger rackets to launder money through often had the nicer homes. It's why a mobster might drop $1,000 on a dinner no problem, but will start sweating when the house bills arrive. If Chrissy can't explain his income to the IRS, he can't buy a big house. We see that Silvio has a nice house, which makes sense as he'll be able to launder money through the Bing. Vito is the highest earner in the family, and he has his family home, a beach house, and has his gumar set up in a penthouse condo. Before he took over construction, Ralph was raking in the cash, and we see he has a semi-detached home where he was with Tracy, but also a much nicer place, housekeeper included. When Bobby Bacala gets upped, he's able to afford Johnny Sack's home, and Chrissy is able to afford his house in season 6 after his involvement with producing Cleaver. And Paulie had it easy. He lives alone and he's a tight guy anyway. But a lot of the other guys have kids to put through college, retirement funds for their moms, and legal bills for court cases, which all have to be sourced legitimately. And it's not simply a case of putting your name on a front. The cover business front often has to be properly maintained. Junior didn't exactly have an amazing place, but aside from it being suggested he has money buried away someplace, he was simply old school and part of a generation that lived within their means. When he needed money, it was there, like the $400,000 or so his lawyer discusses for a part of the trial.